Three disasters, one archipelago, 1 week, and this is happening right now to United States territory in the Pacific. Let me take you through all of it because what has just happened to the Northern Mariana Islands is not just a weather story. It is not just an earthquake story. It is not just a volcano story. It is all three simultaneously. And the combination of what this tiny American territory has just endured, what it is still enduring right now as you watch this, is something that deserves far more attention than it is getting. So let me start with the typhoon, because that is where this story begins. On April 9th, 2026, a tropical disturbance formed over the warm Pacific Ocean. It organized, it intensified, and within days it became one of the most powerful storms on the planet. Super Typhoon Sinlaku. At its peak over open water, NASA's SIRS satellite captured Sinlaku, carrying sustained winds of 280 kilometers per hour. That is 175 miles per hour. That places it in the violent typhoon category, the highest tier used by the Japan Meteorological Agency, the equivalent of a Category 5 hurricane on the Saffir-Simpson scale used in the United States. It was the strongest tropical cyclone anywhere on Earth so far in 2026, the second most powerful typhoon this early in the year in recorded history. Yale Climate Connections confirmed that on their global records, and it was heading directly for the Northern Mariana Islands, a United States Commonwealth territory in the North Pacific, 45,000 people, home to Saipan, Tinian, and Rota. Now here is the detail that made the situation significantly worse. Sinlaku became nearly stationary, about 30 miles off the Saipan coastline. It just sat there, not moving, for hours, pouring sustained Category 4 and 5 force winds, catastrophic rain, and monster waves directly onto the islands. Sustained winds of 145 miles per hour, 230 kilometers per hour at the moment of landfall on April 14th. Gusts on Saipan reaching 130 miles per hour, 209 kilometers per hour. The Japan Meteorological Agency measured the central pressure of the eye at 920 millibars at landfall. A personal weather station on Saipan recorded 919 millibars inside the eye. That is an extraordinarily low pressure reading. That is how powerful this system was. The National Weather Service forecast 15 to 25 inches of rain over Tinian and Saipan. That is 38 to 64 centimeters. Storm surge flooding of 5 to 8 feet, that is 1.5 to 2.4 meters. Wave heights of 20 to 30 feet, that is 6 to 9 meters. Give this video a like and a share right now, guys. This is a U.S. territory being hammered by a triple disaster in 1 week, and the people there need attention. It costs you nothing, and it helps this channel enormously. So what happened when Sinlaku made landfall? Cars were flipped, utility poles toppled across Saipan. A car was filmed sitting on top of two other cars in an apartment building parking lot. Tin roofs were shredded and launched as projectiles through the air. Residents described objects flying left and right. A blue sedan sat on its side in the street. Trees were uprooted across the island. Entire commercial rooftops were peeled off. The Saipan mayor, Ramon Camacho, said the storm was hitting them hard and that it was so difficult for first responders to reach people because of the rain and wind. His words, objects just flying left and right. Then came the news about the hospital. The only hospital on Saipan, the only one, suffered severe flooding during the typhoon. Major resorts lost their backup generators, and as I am recording this, there have been no reported deaths, which is remarkable, which speaks to the preparation, the shelters that were activated by FEMA across the islands, the emergency declarations that President Trump approved before the storm struck. 100 FEMA staff dispatched. The American Red Cross sheltering more than 1,000 residents across Guam and the Marianas. But the damage is severe, extensive, and ongoing. Officials say some hard-hit areas could be without power and water for weeks, not days, weeks. The entire island of Saipan lost power as Sinlaku approached. 15,924 people without electricity on Saipan alone. Rhoda's 967 power customers knocked offline, Tinian's feeders damaged, roads across the island impassable, a shelter in place still in effect Thursday as first responders were unable to conduct a full damage assessment. The public information officer for the territory's Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Management, Bernard Villagomez, told the Associated Press, and I am paraphrasing, that conditions were still too dangerous for a comprehensive damage sweep. And now here is the piece that nobody is putting in context, the historical context. And this is what got to me when I dug into the numbers. The 2018 Super Typhoon Yutu struck the Northern Mariana Islands with 175 miles per hour winds. It killed 2 people on Saipan, injured more than 120, left a quarter of the 45,000 plus residents homeless. It destroyed 85% of the Saipan campus of Northern Marianas College. That happened in 2018. The college secured $100 million in grant funding to rebuild. And then COVID-19 hit. The economy never recovered. People had PTSD from U2. Then Sinlaku arrived. The school's president said, and I am paraphrasing carefully, just as they were finally beginning to recover and rebuild, they get hit with this. And the president of the Northern Marianas College is Chamorro, the indigenous people of these islands. He said something that resonated with me. He said, we are an incredibly resilient people, but just because we are resilient does not mean we should be subjected to this on this frequent basis. Let that sink in. Now let me talk about the earthquake, because it arrived during the same window. And it happened in the volcanic Northern Islands, the ones Sinlaku is now tracking toward. On April 14, 2026, at 1:04 p.m. local Saipan time, as Sinlaku was already battering the islands, a magnitude 5.5 earthquake struck 28 kilometers northwest of Agrihan Island in the far northern Mariana Islands. Multiple agencies confirmed it: the European Mediterranean Seismological Center, the German Research Center for Geosciences, France's National Seismological Network, all confirmed between magnitude 5.4 and 5.9 for the same event. The quake was at a depth of approximately 215 to 220 kilometers. That is an intermediate depth earthquake originating in the subducting Pacific plate beneath the Philippine Sea Plate. This is a critically important detail that I want to spend time on, because the Northern Mariana Islands are not just scenic volcanic peaks in the Pacific. They sit directly above one of the most extreme subduction zones on Earth. The Mariana Trench, the deepest place on the entire planet, almost 11 kilometers, that is 36,000 feet below sea level. That trench exists because the Pacific Plate is being forced downward beneath the Philippine Sea Plate at this exact location. And that process, that relentless collision of oceanic crust grinding under the archipelago, is what creates the volcanoes, the earthquakes, and the geological violence that now defines this region. The Northern Mariana Islands have recorded at least 19 earthquakes above magnitude 7 since 1900, one earthquake every 5 to 10 years of magnitude 7 or larger. The largest recorded in the area was a magnitude 8.1 in November 1914, and just 2 days before the M5.5, on April 12th, a magnitude 5.0 struck the pagan region of the Northern Marianas at a depth of 226 kilometers. 2 magnitude 5 plus earthquakes in the northern volcanic islands in 2 days, while a Category 4 typhoon was bearing down on the same archipelago. Further in this video, I want to talk about the volcanoes, because the third part of this triple disaster is the one that almost nobody is covering. And it is the one that concerns me most when I think about the weeks ahead. The volcanic chain of the Northern Mariana Islands contains 15 identified volcanic islands and submarine volcanoes. Some of them are so remote and so poorly monitored that the USGS itself has assigned them an alert level of unassigned. That is their technical category: not green, not yellow, not red. Unassigned, meaning we simply do not have enough instruments on these remote volcanic peaks to tell you what they are doing. The islands of Pagan, Agrihan, Asuncion, Anatahan, Maug, Sarigan, Farallon de Pajaros, and several others, all active volcanic systems, all in the direct path of the typhoon as it tracks northward through the island chain. all with USGS volcano alert levels of UN assigned. Let me tell you about Pagan in particular. Because the earthquake swarm of the past week was centered around the Pagan region. Pagan is a volcanic island about 320 kilometers north of Saipan, population essentially zero, tiny abandoned village, but Pagan is an active stratovolcano, two volcanic cones connected by a narrow isthmus. With a summit 570 meters above sea level, Pagan has erupted multiple times in the 20th century. Its largest documented eruption in 1981 caused the evacuation of all residents. The island has never been reoccupied, and in April 2026, multiple M5 class earthquakes have struck in and around this same Pagan Agrihan volcanic region, while Sinlaku is moving directly through it. And here is the uncomfortable reality that the USGS themselves acknowledge directly in their monitoring reports. The Northern Mariana Island volcanoes are monitored using seismo-acoustic sensors on Saipan, distant seismic stations in Guam and Chichijima, Japan, and hydroacoustic data from Wake Island. Their own words state clearly that this level of monitoring can detect significant volcanic activity in the CNMI, but cannot provide advanced warning of eruptions. Cannot provide advanced warning. That is the USGS saying publicly that they cannot give you advance notice if one of these remote volcanic islands starts erupting. And right now, those sensors on Saipan, many were knocked out by the typhoon. The National Weather Service itself acknowledged that many monitoring instruments on the islands were down after Sinlaku. So we are in a period right now where a Category 4 typhoon just swept through a volcanic island chain, knocking out monitoring instruments, while an earthquake swarm has been recorded near the same volcanic islands, and we are operating with reduced situational awareness across the entire northern arc of the Mariana volcanic chain. Do I think Pagan is about to erupt? I cannot say that. The earthquakes in this region are largely deep, associated with the subducting Pacific plate rather than shallow volcanic unrest. But the broader context demands attention. Because let me tell you about Anatahan, 120 kilometers north of Saipan. Anatahan was considered completely quiet for the first 18 years of its recorded monitoring history. No eruptions ever in historical time. Then in March and April 1990, residents reported earthquake swarms. Then in 1993, another swarm. Then on May 10, 2003, with no seismometer even running on the island, Anatahan exploded, its first eruption in recorded history, an eruption column reaching 10 kilometers, that is 33,000 feet, into the sky. The eruption cloud traveled more than 1,000 kilometers to the west. No warning. No advance notice. The seismometer that scientists had installed years earlier was not even operating when it happened. The USGS's own post-event analysis noted that the monitoring program had funding issues and the equipment was not running. Does that scenario sound familiar? Funding constraints, equipment not operational, a remote volcanic island, an eruption nobody saw coming. Now here is a detail from that 1990 seismic activity at Anatahan that really stopped me. The earthquake swarm and accompanying ground inflation that alarmed residents in 1990 indicated that magma had moved into the volcano, and what triggered the evacuation of Anatahan that year? A large regional earthquake. On April 5, 1990, a magnitude 7.5 earthquake struck 150 kilometers east of Anatahan in the Mariana Trench, and within days, residents were reporting increased seismicity, increased fumarolic activity in the crater, a change in the crater lake color from green to bluish-gray, a regional earthquake triggering a response in a nearby volcanic system. We saw something similar after the 2017 Chiapas M8.2 earthquake triggered seismicity at El Chichon volcano in Mexico. We have seen it after the Tohoku earthquake triggered volcanic responses in Japan. The connection between large regional earthquakes and volcanic unrest in nearby systems is a documented phenomenon, not guaranteed. Not every earthquake triggers a volcano, but the pathway is real and documented. And right now in the Northern Mariana Islands, we have had multiple M5 class earthquakes in the volcanic northern arc in the days surrounding a catastrophic typhoon that has knocked out monitoring instruments. I want to be very precise. No eruption has been confirmed or announced by any agency. The USGS has not raised any alert for any specific volcanic island in the Northern Marianas related to these events. The earthquakes are at intermediate depth, associated with normal subduction processes. But I think the combination of factors happening simultaneously deserves careful and honest attention, because there are things happening here that the instruments can no longer fully see, and there are volcanoes in this archipelago with a documented history of surprising scientists. Now, let me tell you what is happening right now on Sinlaku's current track. As of today, April 16th, the typhoon has weakened to a tropical cyclone with sustained winds of around 215 kilometers per hour, 134 miles per hour as it moves northward. It is now curving toward the sparsely populated volcanic islands of the far northern Marianas, Alamagan, Pagan, Agrihan, the same volcanic islands where the recent earthquake swarm was centered. These islands are essentially unpopulated, but they are monitored in theory by instruments that may now be damaged or offline after the storm's passage. Sinlaku will eventually recurve northeast and begin interacting with the mid-latitude westerlies, which will accelerate its movement and pull it toward Japan over the next 3 to 5 days before it loses its tropical characteristics entirely. But the Northern Marianas will feel its passage through the volcanic island chain, and then the recovery begins. 45,000 people on Saipan, Tinian, and Rota. No power for weeks in the hardest hit areas. One flooded hospital, impassable roads, a damaged monitoring network, FEMA dispatching personnel and supplies, the Red Cross sheltering thousands. And this is the 10th time since 2016 that a Category 4 or 5 tropical cyclone has hit a U.S. state or territory. The 10th time in 10 years. Yale Climate Connections noted that this equals as many Category 4 and 5 landfalls as the U.S. suffered in the prior 57 combined years, 10 catastrophic landfalls in 10 years versus 10 in the previous 57. That context matters. And Sinlaku is the classic type of early-season super typhoon that forms when an El Niño event is building. Yale Climate Connections confirmed that a powerful El Niño event appears to be brewing for 2026 to 2027. El Niño years produce typhoons that form farther east, travel longer tracks over warm water, reach higher intensities, and are more likely to strike island chains like the Marianas. This is not a freak event, it is a signal, and the people of Saipan, who were rebuilding from 2018's U2, who survived COVID devastating their economy, who were just beginning to see recovery, are now starting over. Again. The president of Northern Marianas College, a Chamorro man whose people have lived on these islands for thousands of years, said something I cannot stop thinking about. Just as they were finally beginning to recover, this happened. We are resilient, but resilience is not permission to keep suffering. I will be watching the recovery in the Marianas. I will be watching the Northern Volcanic Island arc as Sinlaku passes through and monitoring resumes. I will be watching for any USGS updates on volcanic activity in the region. Everything I cover is in the end screen. If you want to support this channel and keep this analysis coming, you know where to find me. Stay safe, guys. Be aware. Bye-bye.